Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Transformational Tuesday, you guys. Transformational Tuesday. Good morning. We're back at another life lesson. We're talking about prioritizing our values this week, prioritizing our values as a part of the Seizing Control of Your Life series. And and today we're talking about triggers, right? What makes you question your priorities? What makes you question your priorities? Really stop letting your patterns override your purpose, right? And start noticing the emotional clues that invites your healing. That invites your healing. You guys stop letting your patterns override your purpose and really start noticing the emotional clues that invite your healing. You know, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Mariah. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Listen, my why this morning, because I know what it feels like to make bold declarations about values and then feel blindsided by guilt, anxiety, and confusion the moment I tried to live in them. The moment I tried to live in them. Listen, this session is for you, or it's for those who say, I want to change, but wrestle with the discomfort that shows up when they do. I want to help you understand that triggers don't mean something's wrong with you. It actually means something sacred is waking up. Listen, something sacred is waking up in you. This session is designed, you guys, to really help you identify and understand the emotional triggers that cause you to question your priorities. But transformation really happens when you act anyway, right? With clarity and compassion. If you're serious about honoring your growth, stay curious, right? Stay curious, not critical. Trace it, name it, and shift it, you guys. Trace it, name it, and shift it. Okay. All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Shiela Little. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Shiela Little. And Life Lessons is a part of the Project Life initiative. And Project Life is where we turn theory into practice. So let's take our deep breath this morning. Let's take our deep breath this morning. No pressure, just your presence, right? Just your presence. We've already done what we needed to do with our person. We've done our gratitude. We've said thank you, right? We've scanned our bodies. We've connected with ourselves. And now we're just going to do that collectively. So let's feel our feet on the floor, right? Our legs. Let's breathe in. Just getting present. Breathe out. No pressure, just our presence. All right. Our butts in the seat. If we're laying down, wiggling our toes. I'm going to feel our torsos. Today, we're not just identifying what triggers you guys. We're learning how to trace it, right? So let's feel our chest, our backs, our shoulders. While we breathe in, our arms, our hands, just getting very present, right? Claiming this space, right? This present moment. Our necks, our lips, noses, and our eyes, our ears, right? In the space around us, all right? In the space around us. Just getting very present this morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Listen, today we're not just identifying what triggers you, okay? We are learning to trace it so it no longer runs you, all right? So drop one word in the chat and let me know your body, how your body reacts when you prioritize what feels challenging to you. How does your body react, right? A word in the chat of how your body reacts when you prioritize I'm so sorry. How do your body react when your priorities feel challenged? That was all wrong this morning. All right. when your priorities feel challenged. I know that how my body responds, I feel tight, right? When I know that I'm starting to feel challenged, I'll do a check-in and instantly I feel it in my thighs. Like it's as if my thighs have become hardened, like I'm stiffed up. And that's how I know that's a trigger for me or that's a warning. Like, okay, you're resisting something, and instantly I will just relax, right? Get present. Okay. So, one word in the chat. Okay. How does your body react when you prioritize, when your priorities feel challenged? I'm sorry. Okay. And if you don't know, I want you guys to start becoming aware. All right. How does your body respond when you start to prioritize your feelings, your thoughts, and things like that, and you start getting some pushback or some resistance? All right. Listen, who this session is for? This session is for you if you feel confident until it's time to enforce your boundary, right? If you know your priorities, but certain moments make you doubt yourself, okay? If you feel guilt, fear, or shame after making a decision, after making a decision that honors you, okay? This session is for you if you're ready to understand your emotional reaction and not suppress them and finally really choose your values over your triggers, you guys. Listen, this week we're talking about prioritizing our values. Listen, this whole month, we're talking about seizing control over our life. And we're doing that with the plan, you guys. And the first thing we need is to prioritize. All right. And that is what the P stands for in plan. All right. And what do we need to prioritize? Our values. And if we don't know what our values is, hopefully by the end of this week, you'll start to get a gist of what are the things you value. Um, why are values so important? Well, because they're the compass, right? They are the core of us. That's the thing that shapes our reality, right? And we learned yesterday that our values are shaped by what? By our environment, by the people in our lives that came before us, right? By our families, by society, right? And a lot of us haven't what? Haven't updated our value system. A lot of us don't even know what values we live off of. A lot of us are in conflict right now, probably with ourselves and other people, based on a value system. A lot of us are friends with people because we share the same what values, right? I was with a client yesterday, and she was talking about she was in a relationship, and she was talking about how she didn't really know if she wanted to be in a relationship anymore just because of the political climate. And she was like, he's just a whole different guy. And I had to really reintroduce this value system. It just sounds like you guys have different value systems, right? And you can see it in her face, like we do, right? And these values, they get triggered, and when they get triggered, it is kind of like we meet a different person because everything, sometimes we live such a surface life that that sometimes we can go through life and not really have to stand on it, right? Stand on the things we believe in. Or sometimes we're moving for what we think other people want us to move that, we're not really exposing that part of us. But when we get down in the trenches, you guys, we all have values. And what I want to make sure is that the values that you really believe by the end of this week, that you have come to understand that and prioritize that. And if you don't, that you have clicked the link in my went to my website, and you have either signed up for the life lessons lab, the Project Life Lab, or you have taken the emotional intelligence course, right? So that what? So that you can learn about your values, right? So that you can upgrade your values and get more in alignment in your life. All right. Listen, I want to introduce you to Jasmine. All right. So Jasmine is one of our life lesson friends, right? I need a word for the community. So is it friends, cousins? Because I would be like the auntie. So nieces, I don't know what the word would be, but I'm gonna say friends. So Jasmine is one of our life lesson friends, you guys, and so she's been going through the series, and so we know on Mondays, right? We identify stories. So on one of the Monday life lessons, Jasmine identified a core story, right, that she carried from her childhood, and what that story was if I'm not helpful, I'm not lovable, right? So she identified that, right? When she identified that, she realized that this belief became a value, right? It was self-sacrificing. So during the labs, she realized this, right? So she realized that this belief became a value, right? Self-sacrificing that shaped everything from her career choices, you guys, to her relationships. And for years, Jasmine had overcommitted. She said yes to everything and felt responsible for other people's happiness. That story became her script, you guys. Good morning, brother. Good morning, brother. Right? This story became her script, right? But then came the shift. After after the life lessons on stories, like Jasmine declared, from now on, I'm choosing alignment over approval. My new value is peace, right? My new value is peace. Then came Tuesday session when I started to talk about triggers, right? And the very next day, Jasmine said no to a friend's last minute request that that would have really drained her. So as soon as she hit send on the text, guess what she felt? She felt the tightness in her chest, right? She felt the racing thoughts, right? She felt this guilt whispering, right? You're being selfish. She's going to think you don't care, right? And that's when she questioned everything. And am I doing the right thing? Maybe my peace isn't that important, right? This was the inner critic starting to come up, right? And make Jasmine really doubt if she had made the right decision to what? To prioritize her values. But when good morning, Gladys. It's okay. Get back to me whenever you can. All right. So, but when Gladys, look at me, but when Jasmine didn't realize, well, what Jasmine didn't realize at first was that the emotional reaction wasn't about her friend, you guys. It was the trigger, right? It was the triggered echo of her old story trying to pull her back, right? It was the old story triggering her back into what? Her old pattern. Okay. So on Monday, right? She met So on Monday, you met your story. We talked about that yesterday. Now on Tuesday, right? Your story will try to see if you're serious. And that's what we're talking about today, right? That's what triggers do. They test what? Your alignment. They test your alignment. Jasmine's breakthrough came when she paused, when she named the trigger and said it out loud. This is just fear trying to protect me, but I choose my peace and I am worthy. Though that moment wasn't just an emotional win for her, you guys, it was a spiritual milestone. Listen, your triggers will always show up when you start honoring what you say matters. That doesn't mean you're off track, right? That means you're being refined. That means you're being refined, you guys. I really wanted to share that because I want you to see that what, we'll say, I'm being triggered or you're triggering me. And we have labeled triggers as this bad thing. And we will get up and we will leave because we feel it, right? And I want to introduce a new way to see this trigger. Like it is an invitation for you to investigate, for you to say, okay, why is that showing up? And we're going to talk about that after we talk about our guiding quote for today. Okay, so our guiding quote is listen, just because you feel triggered, it doesn't mean you're wrong, right? It means your healing is asking to be heard. Okay. Just because you feel triggered doesn't mean you're being wrong. It means your healing is asking to be heard. Okay. All right. Listen, I once had a client that told me that she was finally feeling confident about prioritizing rest. She cleared her schedule for the day. Um, she cleared her schedule for a day of stillness. But when the moment came, she spiraled. Guilt, anxiety, and self-criticism flooded in. She kept thinking, shouldn't I be doing something? What will people think? Right? Her trigger wasn't about the rest, you guys. That it was her belief that doing equaled value, right? It was a belief that she carried that doing, that being active equaled that she was what? Productive. And that productivity equaled what? Value. That belief had been with her since she was a child. And once we named it, she stopped reacting and started reclaiming. Now she schedules rest without apology, right? Because she redefined what worthiness felt like, and what it feels like for her. So I want you to pause, okay? And I want you to think about what's one area in your life where you feel tension between what you value. Good morning, Miss Brianna. All right. I want you to think about what's one area in your life where you feel tension between what you value and what you've been reacting to. Okay? What emotions surface when you begin choosing differently? Okay? What emotions surface when you begin choosing differently? Listen, I know we blame the devil for it. You know, I just said that I was going to change that, and here you go bothering me. Right? Or I just said I was gonna do this, and here go the devil picking on me. I know that we have labeled this thing that happens right after we set an intention, right? We have named it everything other than an invitation for our healing to take shape and to take form. And I know that it may be challenging for you to see this as an invitation because it's not the invitation that we're used to. We're used to what kind of invitation? We're used to the type of invitation where it's like a gentle welcome, welcome, come in, right? We're used to, and we have a thought and belief that that this healing process is supposed to be kind and gentle to us, right? And in some way, I'm not supposed to feel any type of discomfort. Because if I'm feeling discomfort, then that must mean that something is going wrong, right? Or that something is off, right? And then we will spiral in a meta emotion about the emotion that we have. Okay. And I just want to give you permission this morning to step away from that belief. And if you're if you're challenged with stepping away from that belief, it's okay, right? Borrow my belief until it becomes your belief. All right. And then get in a community with individuals that believe that. And I'm not the only community of individuals that believe this. Okay. So find a community of individuals that can help you align, right? And help you to respond to this invitation a little differently. All right. Listen, triggers are emotional cues, right? Messages, not enemies, right? They reveal where you're still living in your old story that really no longer aligns with your new values. All right. Your body remembers moments when it wasn't safe to choose, right? When it wasn't safe to choose who? To choose yourself, right? Those memories show up as resistance, you guys. All right. So if you don't trace back the trigger, you'll keep abandoning your values every time discomfort shows up. Triggers tell you where you can dig, not where you can retreat. Okay. It tells you where you can sit in something, where you can focus on something, not where you can hide. And we have used our triggers to what? To retreat. Oh, this is a triggering conversation. Let me stop. Oh, you just triggered me. Let me get up out of here. Right? How many of us have did that? Let's put some hands up. You know, We retreat because we in some way picked up that a trigger is something to back up from. And I just want to introduce this concept again when I'm talking about in mental health, right? Not in mental illness, not in mental illness. To have adequate mental health, to expand, to grow, to really sustain, our capacity to really stretch, right? To go beyond what we deem healing, to get on this natural progression of life, you know, uh, we're going to be triggered, and those are invitations for us to pause, to act, to discover, to feel, right? To feel, right? So that we can what? So that we can grow, so that we can learn something different. And remember, it's the brain's, the brain don't want to change. It in that it's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you safe. All right. So if you don't trace your triggers, then you will keep abandoning your values every time discomfort shows up. All right. Right? You want to live freely and not fearfully, right? You want to trust your decisions and not second guess them every time your emotions arise. All right. You want to do that. And to do that, you guys, you need to practice. And the only way you're going to practice is to stand, right? It's to stand up and to do that over and over and over again and to feel that. All right. All right, listen. A woman that I work with said, I used to think my triggers were proof that I wasn't healed. All right. Um, Good morning. Good morning, Miss. Good morning, Mama Sharon. Right. So a woman from our life lab, she said, I used to think my triggers were proof that I wasn't healed. Now I see them as signals. When I stop judging my reactions, I start transforming them. All right. Listen, studies in trauma recovery and neuroplasticity has shown that naming and reframing our emotional triggers really leads to a decrease in our anxiety, right, and stronger decision making, right, and confidence, right. You don't want to get rid of triggers to honor your values. You want to recognize it and really choose with intention. You guys really choose with intention, right. And then I'm just gonna ask: This is what you want, isn't it? This is what you want, isn't it? Okay. All right. So today we focus on triggers, right? The T and stop it, right? Your triggers are not here to torment you. They're here to teach you. They're here to teach you. And the goal isn't to eliminate them, you guys. The goal is to understand them so that you can lead yourself with alignment and grace. All right. Triggers really reveal where your values and your fears are wrestling with one another. And and you get to choose, right? Who wins? You get to choose as a driver in your seat. You get to choose who wins. Who wins the battle? Does my fear win or does my value win? Right? But here's the thing: if you don't know what you value, right? If you're unsure of what you value, then guess what's going to win? Your fears. And this is why this week we're talking about prioritizing your values and really understanding what your values are, right? So that they can be what? The champion, right? So you can sit in them and they can show up and they can start to be your guiding, your so they can start shaping your narratives. They can start being your why, right? And they can start aligning you with your purpose, right? And they're just so critical to who you are. All right. So you get to choose who wins when you identify and prioritize your values. All right. So here's some triggers that really make prioritizing. Here's some triggers that make you question your priorities. All right. So triggers expose where your values and your fears really collide, you guys. Okay. You say you value rest, but when you sit, right, guilt guilt creeps in. All right. You say you value authenticity, right, but confrontation, right, can make you feel unsafe. You say you value growth, but being misunderstood makes you shrink, right? Triggers show up when your values meet resistance internally and externally, right? This moment is of discomfort really makes people second guess what they say they want. this is okay. I want you to know that second guessing is okay. That's you saying, oh, you know, it's like the double dutch. And even if you happen to second guess and fumble in that moment, you get an opportunity afterwards to what? To reflect, to review that moment and say, oh, I get it. I can insert that there. That's what happened, right? I had some resistance. That was my trigger. That was my value in my old story, needing one another. And I second guess. And you're going to start noticing when you're shrinking. You're going to start noticing it. And then we name it, and we name it without judgment. All right. Or we start to learn to name it without judgment. Right. Because at first, right, we're changing. And as we're changing, this old way of being is going to show up, and we have to be gentle and allow that person to come up. But if we want to accelerate that process, that's why we get into groups. That's why we go get the help, because acceleration, what? The same mind that created that, sometimes it's very difficult to be the mind to break it. And so we want to get the objective view there to really help to hear us, to really help us to shape us, right? Okay. Number 2, you question your priorities when your programming kicks in. All right. So we're wired to really repeat what feels safe, basically, right? So we're wired to repeat what feels safe, even when it's no longer true, right? So a trigger can activate a conflict between your current self and your conditioned self, meaning your present self and then your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, right? So who told you that showing up or that slowing down was lazy, right? So there's a story that is like slowing down is lazy, not doing something is lazy, and you want to catch that. That's an old story. That's a conditioned self, right? The current self said I need rest. The conditioned self says slowing down is lazy. Well, who told you that, right? Who told you that speaking up was disrespectful, right? Right? These are investigations. Well, who told me that speaking my mind was disrespectful? Because that's still carrying with you now at 45. Believe it or not, as an adult, you're not speaking your mind, right? Because when you were younger, Big Mom was like, speaking up for yourself is disrespectful, and don't disrespect me. Don't disrespect your adults. And what your child mind said is what? My voice is not important, right? And so what you don't speak up for yourself, all right? And then who taught you that putting yourself first was selfish? Right? Who taught you that putting yourself first was selfish? I was working with a lady before, and she was the oldest of her siblings. And I asked her, well, who taught you that you were not important? And she said, well, my mom taught me I wasn't important because I never wanted to keep my brothers and sisters. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter that I didn't want to keep them, right? She made me keep them anyway. And I said, and what did that mean to you? And she said, that meant that what I wanted didn't matter. And so I just stopped caring, right? Something just as simple. I remember I was working with this little kid, a little boy. This is when I first started working as a therapist. And he was like, my mom doesn't care about me. And I was like, why do you say your mom don't care about me? He was like, because every time I go to play the game, I asked her, I go in her room and I'm like, Mom, can I play the game? And she was like, yeah, you can play the game. And he said, no. He said, every time I ask her, can I play the game? She says, I don't care. And I said, oh, because she said that she don't care, that means she don't care about you. He was like, yeah, because she says I don't care all the time. Anything I ask her, she says I don't care. Now, that is what the little boy told me. That was his story. And he had to be like 12 years old, right? Now, as a man, he may feel like he is not cared for. How did he develop that story? Because he was going to ask for a game. And every time he asked to play the video game, his mama said she didn't care. So I want you to know that sometimes it's not these big stories or these big events that develop or shape our narrative. It's these little simple things that we caught when we were little, right? I just so happen to work with adults. So I don't get the stories like I used to get them when I worked with kids. But when I was just talking about that lady, it made me think about the time I worked with kids. And that little boy told me that, right? And it was so innocent. And I had to kind of like, oh no, your mom cares about you. She was specifically saying she didn't care. And I had to reshape it right then. And you could see him light up like, oh, right? And a lot of us are not, our parents didn't take time to really break down what it meant. And remember, when we're little, our minds are just so, they're sponges. They're just taking in everything, right? They're taking in everything. They're not deciphering what did mama mean when she said that? Was she just talking about the game? Everything holds true. And then we grow with these stories. All right. So we have to, as adults now, go back in and make sense of the stories. And some of the stories that we're holding, you guys, they're just not true. They're just not true. And we have to take inventory and ask ourselves, all right? So these old voices really created what we call emotional static around your new decisions, okay? And you begin to wonder, am I wrong for wanting this? All right? When that happens, that's the moment when transformation has the opportunity to begin, because you can go on and you can start the process of discovery. Am I wrong for wanting this? And then you can start to answer, right? You can start to answer that question. Right, number 3. Triggers test your strength. Test Triggers test the strength of your priorities. All right. You know a value is truly yours when you're willing to feel the discomfort it brings and stay committed. All right. All right. So choosing peace over performance may trigger fear of being left behind, but you okay with that, right? Choosing boundaries may trigger fear of disappointing others, but you okay with that, right? And choosing truth may trigger fear of being judged, but you okay with standing in your truth, right? Here's the thing: when you don't retreat, right? You reveal. When we don't retreat from our values, we actually reveal what's important to us, right? We can feel this disappointment, we can feel this judgment, we can feel this fear, but it doesn't make us retreat what from the things that's important to us. All right, so triggers are there to what, to strengthen our priorities. And if you've been in those situations, right, you understand, right? It's like, whew, right? Right. If a trigger makes you question your priorities, it's an invitation to really clarify it, not abandon it, you guys. Listen, another one is most people don't change their values, they just silence them. All right. Why? Because being triggers feels louder than being aligned. All right. You're not confused. You're just being stressed beyond who you've been trained to be. All right. So let me say that again. Most people don't change their values. They just silence them. So a lot of us, our values hasn't changed. We just don't stand in them anymore. We just have silenced them, right? And I want you to know that you're not confused, you guys. You just have been stressed beyond what you've been trained to be. If you've been trained to not speak up for yourself, it's not that that value isn't there anymore, right? It's just that you haven't been stretched enough to speak, to stand in that. So now you need to train yourself in how does it feel to really speak my mind and to stand in my truth, right? That's what the labs are there for, so that you can have a space to say that, to stand in that before, like in real time, before you go practice it with somebody that you love or with the supervisor or something like that, like for you to do that on your own. Listen, when when that shrinking starts to feel like fear, right? And when that shrinking starts to feel like fear, it's easy to go back to the comfort, right? And call it wisdom. So when we start to 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 stand in our truth and we start to activate this space, right? And we start to feel this fear, right? It's easy. It's easy for us to go back to what's comfortable and then call it wisdom. And how do we call it wisdom? It just wasn't time. It wasn't time for that conversation, you know, right? God was sending me in a different direction, right? We will sophisticatedly and intelligently justify why, right? Why we didn't stand for the thing that we know we value. Because what? Because we started to shrink. Because we started to shrink from what? From the fear, right? Right. But I just want you to know that we have to give ourselves permission to not shrink anymore, right? So no more shrinking, to stay safe, right? Because you're safe in your values when we learn how to prioritize them. All right. Right. And I want to ask you, what emotions or reactions really make you second guess what you said was important, right? If you can identify that, what emotions or reactions really make you second guess what you said was important, and you can name it, then you can start doing the investigation work before. We talk about the importance of stepping away and being alone, but are we really doing the things that we need to do in our solitude? So when we come back into community, we are prepared to really navigate, right, these interactions, because interactions, they're going to trigger us, because people come from different life experiences, right? And they come with their own what? Their own set of values, their own beliefs, their own stories, their own narratives. And if we're looking for everybody to think like we think and act like we act and behave how we behave, just so we can feel all right, then we're gonna always what? Be alone. So in some way, we have to understand what we value so that we can learn how to what? Value what we value, but also have compassion and understand, oh, that person values this, and we can give compassion to them as well. All right. All right. Listen, triggers often show up right before a brave decision. I want you to know this, right? Triggers often show up right before a brave decision. Listen, the moment you decide to prioritize your peace, the moment you decide to prioritize your joy, your purpose, or your rest, don't be surprised if anxiety, if guilt, or if old habits show up. I want you to know that that is not you failing, right? That's that's the fracture between your old identity and the new you becoming. All right. Your triggers aren't telling you to turn back, you guys. Again, it's just asking you, are you sure? Are you sure you want this new identity? And your answer should always be yes. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure I want this. Thank you for the invitation. Right. And we're going to move with the yes. Yes to me. All right. All right. Another one is you question your priorities most when they cost you comfort and connection. Again, um we're talking about how triggers make you question your priorities, and I'm saying this one is you question your priorities most when they cost you comfort and connection. All right. So choosing alignment often means setting boundaries that disappoint some people that we love, and that can be triggering, right? Saying no to good things because they're not what? They're not aligned things. They don't align with my values. They're not God things, right? They don't go with the universal laws, right? I know that the cause and effect to that thing. All right. And then making peace with being misunderstood, right? Everybody is not going to understand me, and I'm gonna make peace with that, right? These are the times when fear or triggers creep in, right? And it looks a little bit like maybe I'm doing too much, right? Maybe I should go back, right? Just because it feels unfamiliar, you guys, it doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Sometimes growth feels like guilt at first, but it's really just grief from who you were no longer pretending to be. I talk about grief a lot in my work because a lot of us right now are grieving an idea of who we should be. So if you think about, I want you to pause and I want you to think about at this big age of, or this little age of 46, this young age of 46, or this young age of 52, or this young age of 35, I thought I would be dot, dot, dot. If you write where you want to be, that's great. Okay. But if you thought your life would have been different, right? You're grieving that, right? You can be unconsciously grieving, right? And having resistance to your current life as it is right now, because something in you felt like I should have been, I could have been, I would have been somewhere else if, right? That's a grief process, right? So we just don't grieve death, right? We also grieve these ideas, these places, and that can be triggering, right? That can be triggering, right? And so as we're healing and as we're growing and as we're prioritizing our values, again, this is a grieving process because the person that I had conditioned myself to be, right? I'm no longer doing that anymore, right? I'm no longer, if I was the person that always said yes, and now I'm the person who's saying no, I have to grieve that person that said yes. I have to grieve that. I work with a mom who has a child who has autism, and it's an adult child, and that child had become very abusive to their mom, and mom had to call the police, and so the child got sent to a home. And although the child was very abusive to mom and mom just couldn't like handle it anymore, guess what? Mom grieved the presence of that child. Although she fully understood that the child was in a safer place, that she was in a safer place, there was still a grief that she was experiencing about that condition, right? About her living in that space, right? And so we had to work on what it meant for her to now have this healthy dynamic with her son and support her son, you know, in this new space with him being in a home, and and all of that, while she was grieving, right? This decision of her aligning in this new value of what was important in the healthy decision for her and her son. Okay, if that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. All right. So we're grieving these old conditions, good, bad, or indifferent, you guys. And sometimes we think because I chose the healthier decision that I shouldn't feel any feelings about leaving that old life. No, that's a condition. That was a conditioned state in your mind and your memory. You have muscle memory about that state. You have, you lived in that state. So there's going to be a grieving process that happens with that, right? And so there's going to be some grief that you experience about that. All right. Some people that I work with, they get new positions, and it's like they're happy, but then they're sad too, right? It's like I feel like I should be so happy about this new job, but I'm not as happy as I thought I was going to be. And I'm like, yeah, because you actually grieving what? Your old job, your old friend. So it's not that you're not happy because you have this new job, but you're also grieving what? The old life. I mean, yes, this job is paying more and it's what you had wanted to experience all your life, and it's everything you dreamed of. But there's the old condition and the old friends and the old life that you didn't always like, but it was a condition that you lived in. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat, right? And so we have to start to live in the end and let those two exist and not just suppress this grief, right? When it's triggered, and allow its space to live too, right? Because that part of you is attached to what? A value, a belief. All right. And we have to discover what that is. Okay. Because listen, your nervous system is used to your old priorities, even if they drained you, right? Your nervous system is used to your old priorities, even if they drained you. All right. You may be more comfortable in survival than you are in self-honoring, simply because surviving is what your body got used to. Okay? A lot of us are more comfortable in survival than self-honoring. Not because that's what we want, but because it's what our body is used to. Okay? So when you start choosing rest over proving yourself, your system can get triggered, right? That's not a weakness, you guys. It's withdrawing from the identity of addiction to from this addiction of abandonment, of self-abandonment, right? It's your withdrawing, it's you withdrawing from this identity addiction of self-abandonment. All right? All right. And I do want you to know that you're not confused. You're just detoxing, right? You're just detoxing from this old way of being. And again, that's why it's so important to get a community, to get help, to get support when you go to shift, right? From these old environments, from these old conditions, internal and external. And the biggest condition is truly an internal condition, because a lot of times our external condition is truly just a reflection of our internal conditions. All right. All right. Our external condition is a lot of times a mirror of our internal condition, you guys. Right. And so our nervous system, and remember, our nervous system is not just a collection of what? Our nervous system. Remember, we inherit a nervous system. And it's so, I always tell the story. It's so interesting because oh my God. Okay, so it's so interesting because I always tell a story when I go to seminars, and I'm like the one of the only melanated faces in there, and they're talking about the brain, and and it's these doctors in there, and they're talking about back in the ice age time, when there was saber-tooth tigers, and they were cavemen, and so the brain had to create this survival mechanism, because the cavemen were fearful, right? They were fearful of the tiger like coming to eat them, and so the brain created this survival mechanism called fight, fight, freeze, or fawn, right? Or they just created fawn. And I'm sitting there as this melanated woman thinking, you're talking about saber-tooth tigers and cavemen. And I'm talking about something that happened within the last decade. I mean, not decade yet, last decade, 200 decades, 400 years, slavery. My granddaddy, could talk about his granddaddy, and what master did to his granddaddy. You know what I mean? And I heard those stories, right? And that stuff was in my granddaddy's nervous system, how he responded to what? To white men, right? How he responded when we went to the South. You know what I mean? And so I want you to know that there is a nervous system in us, right? That is pulling us to keep us safe. And when I'm saying, hey, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, right? We have to whisper that, even if you have to put like a little sticky note on your window, on your mirror, right? When you go to brush your teeth, like, I am safe, right? Just to remind the today you that those conditions that we once had to live in, right? Yeah, we're living in challenging times. I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting that at all. However, we're safe. Like, we have the ability to change our life, to change our conditions. But as long as the mind is triggered, the nervous system is triggered, that like, for real, I could die. You know what I mean? Like, the fear is so real to us, right? Then it's going to be very challenging for us to move, which is why I'm like, seek the help so you can be in a community that feels safe, so that thawing can happen, you guys. All right. So that thawing can happen. All right. Right. Because your nervous system is used to your old priorities, even when they drain you. Right. And the nervous system is holding on. right, to all of your old behaviors. All right. And then I want to remind you that your trigger is not your God voice, all right? Or your trigger is not the voice of God. Like some people confuse a triggered voice, right? You're wrong for saying no with conviction. Okay. Conviction invites really transformation, triggers demand self abandonment. I just want to remind you about that. That conviction really invites transformation and triggers demand self abandonment. Listen, God's voice doesn't it doesn't gaslight you. All right. It doesn't say tell you to do one thing, right? Be one thing and do another. It really guides you, right, with truth and love. All right. And then every time you choose alignment in the face of a trigger, you really build trust with yourself. All right. So every time you stay grounded in your values, you guys, even when you feel the urge to shrink, you're really rewriting your internal blueprint. All right. And you're building what emotional strength and emotional resilience. All right. So your triggers might make you question your priorities, but your healing will answer with uh, but your healing will answer with certainty. All right. Your triggers might question your priorities, but your healing will answer with certainty. All right. All right. So here's our biblical wisdom for today. Psalms 139, 23, and 24. Investigate my life, O Lord. Investigate my life, O Lord. Find out everything about me. Cross examine and test me. Get a clear picture of what I'm about. See for yourself whether I'm doing anything wrong, then guide me on the road to eternal life. All right. Psalms 139, 23, and 24. Listen, this isn't a request for judgment, it's a prayer for clarity, you guys. This psalmist is saying, help me see myself clearly, not condemn me, but guide me. In the context of triggers, you guys, this verse is an invitation to say, God, help me trace my emotions, right? Help me trace the emotions that really cause me to react. Show me the stories behind my sting, behind the sting, right? Show me where my beliefs were formed and whether they serve me, right? Whether they serve me, right? Help me examine myself gently, not tear myself down, but really realign with the truth that I am of who I am. All right. All right. That is the God voice within me is really saying, Holy Spirit, really help me examine myself gently, right? Not tear myself down, but realign with the truth of who I am. Okay. And then a promise verse, John 16 and 13. But when he, the spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all the truth, right? He will guide you into all the truth. All right. This is powerful. This is powerful for emotional work because triggers often cloud our truth. They make us second guess what we know, what we need, or what we say we stand for, right? This verse reminds us that you don't have to figure it all out in your strength, right? That the spirit of truth lives within you and he leads you gently towards alignment. All right. That the spirit will lead you gently towards alignment, right? So this is reassurance that even in messy moments when you're overwhelmed, reactive, or unsure, you're not without guidance, you guys, right? So you can say, I can trust the truth that arises in me when I get still and listen. You know, truth isn't out there; it lives in here, right? And this is why it's so important to get in alignment because truth is not out there; it's in here, right? And my truth, right? The truth that lives in me, being still enough, being aligned enough to really hear that truth, right? And I know I said it yesterday, God don't bless performance, he really blesses alignment, right? And when we start to get aligned, I think we can really start hearing the voice of God in us more. right? Because we get aligned in our truth, right? Listen, these scriptures are not about policing your behavior, you guys. They're really about partnering, right? Partnering with your healing. All right. All right, today I'm not asking you to fix your emotions. I'm not asking you to fix your emotions. I'm not saying that you should fix your emotions, right? I'm asking you to get honest about your emotions, okay? And let God let the truth in, and then and let them guide you, okay? Let your emotions guide you, all right? All right. Triggers don't have to lead you. Okay. Triggers don't have to lead you. Your spirit can. Okay. When we start to align, right? When we start to align ourselves, when we understand our values, when we start making that a priority, there is a divineness that's within us that will start to lead us, right? And again, not this scary. I guess I want to say it like this: not this scary, wooey type of thing. It's like intuition. We can all agree that we have an intuitive gift, and that intuitive gift will start to lead us not from this fractured part of us, but from the healed part of us. All right. They say, God, search me. Right. The verse say, God, search me. You're really saying, show me. This is really saying, show me what's hiding this fear. Show me the wound, right? Show me the worth that is trying to rise up. Okay, right? Here's my anchored question for you. How does inviting God into your emotional reaction really help you respond instead of retreat? How does really inviting this intuitive, divine part of you, right, into these wounded areas really help you to respond instead of retreat, right? Because when we think about our values, we're really thinking about a higher part of us, right? It is a belief system, the thing that we believe in, right? It's the thing that shapes who we are. And when we can stand on that, that becomes what? Foundational to who we are, right? And so when we think about this God in us, really inviting that uh that entity to become a part of our values, right? Of who we are. And instead of retreating when I get triggered, right? Aligning my values with I know like one of my values is treat people right how you want to be treated. Treat people how you want to be treated. Another one of my values is a verse, right? The first verse said love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then the second verse said treat thy neighbor as thyself. And when I first heard that, I knew that that verse was calling me to what? To learn how to love myself, right? Because if I'm called to love thy neighbor as me, at that point, then I don't. If I don't love me, then how can I love my neighbor, right? So that second one is saying, hey, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then the second one is love thy neighbor as you love thyself. So that's really a call for you to do what? To love you, so you can know how to love your neighbor, right? To really understand you. And a lot of us are really treating people how we treat ourselves, right? We not loyal to people because we not loyal to ourselves. We don't keep commitments with people because we not keeping commitments with ourselves, right? If we want to be honest, right? Right? And we understand that, but we want people what to keep commitments to us. We want people to what to love us. We want people to give us things that we have yet to really show up and give to ourselves. And that's okay. The first step is awareness and honesty about it. And then we can shape and then we can transform. All right. And how do we do that? Well, we do it by doing these exercises. So today's action step is we're going to write down one reoccurring. So it is action step. Okay, so we're going to write down one reoccurring trigger that causes you to doubt your priorities. And then we're going to name it without judgment, okay? And if you want a prompt for that, what emotion shows up when I choose my value over my fear? All right. So that's your action step. Really write down one. Let me show it. Write down one reoccurring trigger that really causes you to doubt your priorities and then name it. All right. And then the affirmation for today is I can feel the trigger and still choose alignment. I can feel the trigger and still choose alignment. And then our intention, just set an intention for the rest of the day. The intention for the day is today I choose. Today I honor my values more than I fear my emotions. Today I honor my values more than I fear my emotions. Again, just trying to get back in relationship with our emotions, which we know can be a process. And it's okay. It's okay. All right. And then our bonus challenge for the next 24 hours, really notice when discomfort shows up around your priorities. Don't run. Get curious, right? Get curious about that. Get curious about that. All right. And so I have a call, I have a challenge, and I have a charge for you before we get off the show today. So your call is, what truth are you walking away with today? All right. The challenge is, what's one priority you will protect even when it feels uncomfortable? And then your charge is to go shape your life with values that lead and emotional courage that really lasts. All right. And emotional courage that lasts, you guys. You already know, if this session resonated with you and you're walking away with clarity, listen, drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth together, you guys. Let's celebrate our growth together. And if this session really woke something up inside of you, this is exactly the kind of insight we explore in those weekly coaching labs, you guys. We don't just reflect, we reshape. So you can join Project Life for this month for $47 at SheilaLittle.com/life. Listen, remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. I love you. I love you. I love you. I will see you tomorrow as we talk about the obstacles that really get in the way as you start to prioritize, your values. When you start to prioritize the things that you find most important. Okay. I love you. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow for that life lesson.